never ad-lib. Everything that I always say is always prepared in advance. But I must tell you that I have spoken thousands of times. I don't think ever at any speech in any place in the world that I've been have I ever heard more moving introductory speeches than we heard from the four Rabbonim that we spoke and listened to tonight. You know, there's a pasuk in Tehillim that we all know and we all sing. Hinei matoiv umanoim shevas achim gam yochad. And it's a beautiful song and it's a beautiful concept. How beautiful it is and how special it is when brothers and sisters sit together. But the Zohar HaKodesh tells us a fascinating pshat, an insight into these words. And he says that the word yochad, yachad, is referring to the one and only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he says like this, Hinei matoiv umanoim, how beautiful and how special it is. Shevas Achim, when brothers and sisters get together for a holy purpose, and they're coming for inspiration and to grow and to be inspired, you should know that Gam Yochad, Hashem, who is the Echad Yuchad, He is present in a special element of presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So tonight in this holy shul, which was so beautiful, I mentioned to Rabbi Moskowitz, it's such a gorgeous shul, and he told me it won an award even by secularists who came and saw how beautiful it was designed. But we've come for a very holy reason, and I am positive that the Shekhinah is resting in this auditorium, and hopefully we'll all be able to grow from it. As Rabbi Moskowitz mentioned, I have a great sense of gratitude to Rabbi Aryeh Sidron. He's the one who first called me to come here. I just want to thank the ACHDUS family. They're hosting me for tonight. And so many of you that I know over the years, whether it's in camp or whether Brisson that I've done for you, or places that we've met in other cities and gateways or whatever, I thank all of you for coming. And I pray that we'll all be able to be inspired together. In 1944, the Belzer Rebbe, Rabbi Aaron Rokeach, came and he was able to escape from Europe, from the Holocaust, and he came to Eretz Yisrael. He had lost everyone, his wife, his children, everyone. And all the Belzer Chassidim were gone, they were killed in the war. And now he came, the first Shabbos that he came in Haifa. And he tried to get together as many friends that he had in Eretz Yisrael. He told them that he was coming. And they sat together at a table. You can imagine there probably were not too many. But he decided that he's going to try to rebuild to rebuild bells. That Shabbos was Parshas B'Shalach. Most of you certainly know that Parshas B'Shalach, we read the Shira, it's called Shabbos Shira. And after they made Kiddush and they had a Maitzah, the Rebbe spoke to everyone. And he said, we all know that Rashi asked a very interesting question. The pasuk in B'Shalach tells us, Oz Yoshir Moshe, then Moshe will sing. And Rashi asked the question, what do you mean then? What do you mean in the future? They can sing right now. They just went through the Yam Suf. They just saw the miracles of Mitzrayim, and so they could have sang right now. Why does it say Oz in the future? Oz Yashir Moshe. And Rashi says it's referring to Tchias HaMesim. Because then, in the future, everybody in Klal Yisrael is going to sing. Because as Rashi says, there were so many people, Rahman al-Itzlan, that lost their lives during Makas Choshech. And surely those who survived and made it through the Yam Suf, they had friends and relatives that died. Some of us should say 4/5 of Klal Yisrael died in Makas Choshech. So how could they sing? They lost so many. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, listen, hang in there. Just remember, one day we're all going to be reunited. And Oz, Yosher, then we're going to be able to sing. We can sing now, but the real song is not now. The real song is going to be when we are reunited. And that's what the Heilige Belzer Rebbe said. He said, my dear friends, we've all lost family members. We lost close friends. How could we sing on Shabbat Shira? How can we say Oz Yosher? And he says that's the only thing that we can say. It's hard to sing now, but Oz Yosher. There'll come a time when we will be reunited with all those who lost their lives in terrible ways. And then we'll be able to sing. And that's why we can sing today, because we know the future song is going to be the greatest song ever. When we come here tonight, and we think about what happened in Surfside South, in Champlain Tower South, and all those Heilige people that lost their lives, whether they were Jewish or not Jewish, just suddenly they went to sleep and the next morning they weren't here anymore. And this pain, this terrible, terrible pain exists wherever you go in the world. Wherever you go in the world. It's not only here in Miami. You just mentioned Surfside. Everybody knows. Everybody feels the pain. So how in the world could we sing? The answer is Oz Yosher. There's going to come a time by Tchias HaMesim, and hopefully it'll be soon, that we will all be reunited with the great people that passed away, and then we will be able to sing. You know, we've gone through a difficult 2.5 years. COVID, Maron. And I want to tell you something that one of the great tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael said after Maron. And I believe that it's so appropriate tonight as well. After Maron, we know there were 45 Erlicha people, Rabbanim, Kol Yugalite, Yeshiva boys, all ages, 45 that passed away. Klal Yisrael was in a terrible, terrible, tragic state. And there's a wonderful speaker and a Talmud Chacham in Eretz Yisrael. His name is Rabbi Paysach. And he said the most remarkable thing. I don't know if it's his thought or if he heard it from somebody else, but it's genius. Now, we know in Perek Beis and Avos, the Mishnah tells us, Da mala mala memcha, you should know what's on top of you. Ayin roya, and eye sees, oizen shamas, and ear hears, v'chol masecha b'sefer nechtovim, and everything that you do is written down. So we must be very careful, because there's an eye that sees, and an ear that hears, and everything is written down. So Rabbi Paysach said like this, you could darshan, you could say hamathletically something so amazing about these words in this Heilige Mishnah. Da, you should remember, ma, those 45. Mem hey is equal 45. Those 45 who lost their lives, l'mayla mimcha. It's beyond us. We can never understand it. We will never, until Mashiach comes, understand why Maron had to happen. And I believe it's the same thing with Surfside. We can never, ever figure out why Hashem would want to do something like that. And it's only if we understand with B'tochen l'mayla mimcha that it's beyond us. As a matter of fact, every single fast day, when we say the Haftarah Dishu Hashem B'hi Matzai, we say these words. Ki govu shamayim me'oretz, kein govu drochaim midarchechem, o machshavei sai me'machshavei seichem. As high as the heavens are over the earth, the distance between heaven and earth is so great. So are my ways higher than your ways. We can never, ever understand, and we should never even try to figure it out. And so my thoughts are so different than your thoughts. And so when we come here tonight on the first Yahrzeit, we have to know that it's l'mayla mimchem. It's beyond us. We can't understand it, and we will never understand it. The only thing we have to do is we have to learn to live with it. And that's what I'm going to talk about. How do we live with such a terrible, terrible tragedy? Not to try to figure out why it happened. And I want to tell you a very personal, painful story that taught me a lesson in life. Those of you who know me for many, many years, like Chaim Siegel and others that are here for many, many years, they know that I was only 21 when my father passed away. I'm the oldest of 7 children. My father was a male. He was only 47 when he passed away. Now, when you're 21, you think 47 is an old man. But looking around here tonight, all of us realize how young 47 really is. And I remember that when he was sick in his final illness, he had learned in Ner Yisrael, and Rav Shimon Schwab was his Rebbe. Rav Shimon Schwab was a Rebbe in Ner Yisrael before he became the Rav of the Kehillah of Washington Heights. So my father was always friendly with him, and my father was in a hospital in Washington Heights for Shabbos. And so my father asked Rav Schwab, could my 2 sons be with you for Shabbos? And like this, they'll daven by you and eat by you, but then they'll come visit me in the hospital. And Rav Schwab said, of course. So Shabbos morning we davened in the Kehillah with the choir and all, was magnificent davening. And then after davening, my brother, Rav Kalman, Shalom, and I, Yubal Chaim, we went to the hospital to visit my father. I came back from the hospital, and Rav Schwab and his Rebbetzin were waiting for us. And Rav Schwab says to me, "Nu, so how's your father?" So in my innocence of being 21, I said, I have betachan that he'll be well. I have faith that he'll be well. And Rav Schwab got so serious with me. And he said, betachan does not mean that your father's going to get well. I was so shocked. The Gadol Hador is telling me, one of the Gadol Hador is telling me that my father's not going to make it. Betachan does not mean that your father's going to be well. He says, betachan means that Hashem has a master plan. And hopefully one day you can understand it. And that taught me a very important lesson in life. Bad stuff happens. Every one of us goes through difficulties. And when somebody loses somebody that's so close to them, it's crazy to say to them, everything is for the good. Right now we don't know it's for the good. Eventually we'll figure it out. But right now it's horrendous. And you know what? The Chazon Ish says the same thing. I'm going to show you the lashon, the language of the Chazon Ish. You won't believe it. In Amunah B'Tachan Perid Beis Ois Aleph. Tos! He said it's a big mistake. Believe Rabin B'Musar B'Tachan. Many people have a mistake when it comes to the idea of B'Tachan and faith. Ki betach here toiv. Of course it's going to be good. It's not true. There's no guarantee anything's going to be good unless a Navi tells it to you. Moshe Rabbeinu, Yecheskel, Yeshaya, Yirmiyah. That's why we don't know Shiva Shem for Rishona. So these type of people should be able to tell us what's happening, what's good and what's bad. But really, you don't know. We have no idea. But every one of us has to believe that Hashem knows what He's doing. And that one day we'll be able to understand it. And as I said before, the purpose of coming tonight is not to figure out why it happened, but to figure out how we're going to live with it, how we're going to manage, how do we go on, what is our response to something like this. Now I want to tell you something that somebody here from Miami, I don't know if he's here tonight, although I did call him, and if you're here, please let me know that you're here. He's a life coach, and his name is Rabbi Marlowe. A few months ago, Rabbi Marlowe, who was a wonderful person, lost a 26-year-old son. The boy was learning in Beitar in Eretz Yisrael, a Talmud Chacham, a sensitive boy, a humble boy, and one day he just passed away. As was mentioned before, there's no greater pain. The Rav Shlita mentioned, somebody loses a son, loses a child, can't get over that. How do you get over something like that? So Rabbi Marlowe told me something that is so incredible, and I guess only a life coach could think of this. I've never met him, so I don't know how fit he is, but he told me that he runs every day on a jogging track. So I imagine it looks pretty good. And he told me that a few weeks after his son passed away, he was on a jogging track here in Miami someplace, and he noticed the most unusual thing. there was an old man walking with a cane on the jogging track backwards. Now he was walking the way everybody was going. Everybody was going forward. He was also going, except he was walking backwards. And he was holding a cane. And Rabbi Marlow just looked at this guy. What is this guy thinking? He's walking forward, but he's looking backwards, and he's walking with a cane. What is he doing? And then Rabbi Marlow thought, you know that this is an allegory for what life is all about when somebody loses someone. You got to go forward. You can't be looking back and saying, I'm not going to be at their chasana, I'm not going to be at their bar mitzvah, I'm never going to see their grandchildren. You got to be going forward. But you got to look back and see how lucky you were to have those people and to recognize the goodness of those people that we now have to look back at. And that's how he gets through this difficult time in his life. Thinking about the greatness of his child, the Torah that he learned, the humility that he had, the sensitivity that he had. And he tries to take, as Rav mentioned before, one of those characteristics and do something every day, l'zecha nishmosai, in that realm that he did. And you know something? I told Rabbi Marlow that he was mechav, and he thought exactly what the Chofetz Chaim tells us. If you take a look in the wonderful, wonderful Sefer Avos Chesed, the Chofetz Chaim says that anybody who loses anyone, a parent, a sibling, a child, a friend, take a midah that person had and do something in Kedusha. You want to donate a shas. You want to donate a Sefer Torah. And if you can't, he says, even donate one sitter. Because if somebody in the shul davens in that one sitter that you donated and you put your friend or your father or your mother or your sibling or your spouse's name, it's a schus for the neshama of that person. The neshama goes higher. And the neshama sits with all the other tzaddikim. And that's what I want to say to all that lost people. I know that there's some that are here tonight and some that are watching on live stream. And for all of us who have ever lost any relative, anybody that's close, do something b'kedusha. Whether you open a gemach, which is a charity fund, whether you give svarim, or whether you do anything that's holy in their name, it's a schus for their neshama. And I'm going to give you some examples of what certain people did and how they live till this day, even though they've lost such precious, precious children. The first one that I want to talk about, I'm going to tell you about 3 examples. Moshe Abenetzia Zakan. Back in 1988, they lost their daughter Batya. Batya had that minute, that custom. She would dance at every wedding. She was a great dancer, and the girls loved to watch her dance. Every kala couldn't wait until Batya would dance in front of them. And then she was killed in a car accident. She was expecting a baby. And now how in the world do you go on after such a tragedy, losing a married daughter who was expecting a child? So what they started was Yad Batya Lakala. Yad Batya Lakala has helped since 1988. It's hard to believe. 23,017 kalas. Now, they don't give their own money only, but they raise money. And these kalas get pots and pans and linen and dishes. And it's a fabulous organization in New York. Anybody that knows a kala that needs money, has to be funded, you call Yad Batya Lakala, they'll help. But now Batya lives. Batya lives because every day girls are getting married. And it's only being funded because of her. I have a dear friends, Yankee and Ella Adler. They lost a son, Michael, a few weeks after his bar mitzvah. It was horrendous. I went there. What do you say? You just snap and cry. There's nothing to say. What can you say? The parents who lost a child 3 weeks after bar mitzvah just had an aneurysm and it was over. So you know what they started? Matnas Michael. They decided that they are going to give pairs of tefillin to those children that need it. And since that year when it happened, when it happened so many years ago, 1,200 boys have gotten tefillin from the Adlers. Every year, they have them Lav Malchus, sometimes Avron Fried comes, Mordechai Ben David, Shlomi Dax, different singers come, and they raise money. And lately they started buying hats. You know, hats can be expensive. And they even, some of them, for some of the mothers, they buy them bar mitzvah dresses, if they can't afford it. So Michael lives, because they're doing that favor. And there's a fellow that I'm very close to, his name is Dr. Chaim Abaton. Him and his brothers are all doctors. And when their father, Rabbi Usher, passed away, so I remember I was sitting with Chaim, we were trying to think, what could we do? L'zech Nishmas, his father, Rabbi Usher, was a Talmud Chacham, a Rav in Long Beach, in Long Island, learned in Panovich. And he came up with a great idea, refuah cards. I don't know if you know this, but there's a certain phrase, a tefillah that you're supposed to say before you take any medical procedure or any vitamin or medication or whatever. And they printed that tefillah. Chaim, I myself have given out thousands of them. If you ever want them, just call me or email me and I'll send you as many as you want. And so Rabbi Abaton lives. And I'll tell you an amazing thing. He's a gastroenterologist, Chaim Abaton. And he told me that he has these cards on his desk. And he called Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky and he said, you know, I have this tefillah in Hebrew and in English. Should I give it to my Goyish patients? I give it to all my Jewish patients before they're going to have a colonoscopy or anything like that. That they should say it. So Rav Shmuel said, of course you should give it to the Goyish patients. They have to believe in God. They have to know that you're not the shliach, that you're only the shliach. God is the ultimate healer. So he's given out thousands. So Rav Osher Abaton lives. I remember when my father passed away. He was such a baki in halacha. He was such a baki in Mishnah Brura. So I sponsored for a while. Some of you may know Rav Shimon Eider, and never he passed away. He was in Lakewood, a tremendous Talmid Chacham. He used to make cassettes, if you remember what those are, on halacha and pamphlets. And so I sponsored it. L'zech Nishmas my father. So every time somebody listened to one of those cassettes, my father was alive. That's what I'm saying to all of you. Every one of us that's listening here and live stream. If you know anybody that passed away, especially in Surfside, and you understand what did they appreciate, think about it and do something. Don't just say for Torah. Try to figure out. The Zakans, they realized their daughter danced at weddings, got Batya Lakala. Michael passed away after Bar Mitzvah, they came out tefillin. That's how you have to zero in, and that's how the person continues to live. But I believe that there's another strategy that we all have to follow. In these difficult times, COVID, Meron, Surfside, Ukraine, Hamas, all the terrible finster tzaras that we read about. I just read a news article in a Jewish newspaper. He wrote something that is so true, it's incredible. I never thought about it. You know, it used to be after you ate supper, you know, you would take the newspaper, and, you know, to read the paper and just see what's going on in the world. Who can do that anymore? You read the paper, you get so depressed. The truth is that there are certain headlines, when I see the story, I say, I just cannot read this article. I can't. It just throws you into such a tizzy. You get so sad and so depressed, it's awful. So we've gone through tough times. How are we going to survive? I'll tell you how we survive. We have to begin stopping to think about ourselves. We have to care about each other. And when you give chizuk and you think about other people, life becomes totally different. And I'm going to share with you now some stories that are so incredible. And we'll see, as the Rav mentioned before, what people are really at. You look at certain people, you can't judge them, as you will see in a moment. So this story, to me, this is the greatest COVID story of all. And this shows us what Jews are all about and what we could become. Mrs. Devorah Monk lives in Lakewood. She told me the story herself. She moved to Lakewood a number of years ago with her husband. Never he got sick and he passed away way before COVID. But now, in April of 2020, she knew she was going to have to be at the Seder alone because of social distancing. Now, even though she moved to Lakewood because all her children are there and grandchildren, but they couldn't have the Seder together. So how in the world is she going to make a Seder? She told me. She said, Rabbi KROHN, since I'm a child, I was never alone on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Either I was with my parents, or my husband, or my children, or my grandchildren. Now I'm going to have to make a Seder alone? How can I do that? She didn't know what in the world she was going to do. She has neighbors, and I spoke to the neighbors. You know, I always like to check out the story. And the family asked me, please don't say our name. So let's call them the Beckers. So Mrs. Becker calls Mrs. Monk and says, you know, your dining room window opens up to a little garden. And our living room window opens up to the same garden. And it's a very small area in between our homes. We are willing to move our dining room table into the living room. You could keep your dining room window open, and we'll keep our living room window open, and we'll make the Seder. You'll be able to hear us. We can have the Seder together, even though we'll be in 2 different homes. She said, you would do that for me? She said, of course. My kids love you. You're like a bubby to them, an Oma. You know, that's how you say it in German. Mrs. Monk, she always took care of the kids. Of course we'll do it. Listen to this. The next morning, Mr. Becker calls her. And he says, you know, my wife told you the great idea we thought of, but, you know, we don't want to try it out the first night of Pesach. What if it doesn't work? What are we going to do the second night? Let's have a trial run. Let's do it Friday night, Shabbos HaGadol. Could you believe this? So Shabbos HaGadol, we're going to move our dining room table into the living room. You open up your window in the dining room. We'll open up our window in the living room. And let's see if you could hear Kiddush and Zmiris. And you know something? It worked perfect. She was able to hear the kids singing Zmiris, the Kiddush, and everything. Now she knew the Seder is going to be great. Fine. As if that's not enough, Erev Pesach, the Becker children, they come knocking on the door. And she comes to the door. Of course, they're not coming into the house. They have a kaira. They have a Seder plate. Mara, the Harosis, the karpas, the salt water, it's all there. They're giving it to her. They can't believe it. What kind of people are these? Listen to this. They have the Seder. The Seder is fabulous. It ends at 1 o'clock in the morning, 1:15 a.m. Mrs. Monk told me she hears a knock on the door. And she's thinking, who's coming? 1:15, Elio. I know he came a half hour ago. Who's coming now? She opens up the door. It's her kids. They walk 20 minutes from their home, from the Seder that they had. They stopped their Seder, and they came to that. They said, Mom, or Oma, you know, the kids and grandchild, how was the Seder? She said, how was the Seder? It was fabulous. She said, what do you mean fabulous? She said, I felt like Daddy came back. I said, what do you mean? She said, you know, I'm living next to the Beckers for 6 years. I had no idea that Yekisha people, German people like us, they sang every single song that Daddy sang. Every song they sang. Just like Daddy. I felt Daddy was back. Wow. So Yehuda, the son, starts laughing. So Mrs. Laura Mom told me, she said to her son, Yehuda, why are you laughing? He said, Ma, I don't want to tell you. A couple days ago, they called me up and they asked me if I'd make a voice recording of all the songs Daddy sang over the years. And so they practiced all the songs. And not only that, she told me, I didn't know this, that Yekis, German people, they sing at the end of the Seder, Adon Elohim Yigdal and Ein Elokeinu, and that's what they sang. Who thinks of that? We could all have thought of that. Is that the most genius idea? It's sensitive, right? Amazing. To go learn the Nigunim so that an Amona should feel comfortable at the Seder. That's really what it's all about. That's ACHDUS. When you have people like that in the community, everybody's alive. Everybody's there for each other. Listen to this. We know one of the greatest people that passed away, and never at the end of his life, he was affected with COVID. That was Rabbi David Feinstein. Zecher Tzaddik L'Bracha. Of Moshe's son. So I have a friend. This guy's name is Ari Hirsch. Okay, I know I'm on tape. I'm not going to say exactly what kind of guy he is, but you know, he's got weird ideas sometimes. And he runs a Jewish newspaper, which is free. And he gives it out all over, and every once in a while, he asks 50 public people the same question. And everybody's interested to see, you know, what is this writer going to say? What is this singer going to say? What is this Rebbe going to say? Whatever. He calls 50 different people, different aspects of life, with the same question. So he once called me up. He said, Rabbi KROHN, tell me, what's your favorite Yom Tov, and where do you like to spend it? And he asked Yaakov Shweki, and he asked Mordechai Ben David, and he asked, you know, a lot of different famous people. So I told him, Sukkot in Eretz Yisrael, there's nothing greater than Sukkot. In Eretz Yisrael with your family, I can't even get through the words Shechiyona. I'm crying like a baby. When I say Shechiyona with all my kids sitting there, you know, Sukkot. Once asked him, what's my favorite Masechta? 3 years ago, he calls me up and he says, Rabbi KROHN, I'm going to ask 49 people besides you. And this is a question that all of you should try to ask your kids tonight. Or ask your friends. It's a fabulous question. If you can invite any 3 people from Adam Arisha till today, which 3 people would you invite to your house? Think about that. So, a lot of women tell me, Sarah Schneer, Rachel Amenu, some men say Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov. You know, everybody's got different answers, right? So he asked me, so I told him the first one would be David HaMelech. David HaMelech had so many problems in life. No matter what problem you had, you know, he could figure it out. Second is Rashi. I love Rashi. To me, he seems like the most compassionate, caring person, and he knows all the Rashis. He wrote them. So anything you want to know, any Gemara, Medrash, Shmuel, Tanakh, whatever, just ask Rashi. He knows everything. And the third one was Reb Chaim Oizer. Fine. If I asked Rabbi Lipsky, I'm sure he could say the Lubavitcher Rebbe and 2 others, whatever. We can imagine. So, fine. He calls me up a few weeks later. He said, Rabbi KROHN, I hope you're going to buy this week's edition or get it because I got all the answers. He can't find out. And I couldn't hold myself back. I said, Ari, you got to tell me, who gave you the best answer? Right? I'm waiting. You should say me, yeah? He says, Rab David Feinstein. I said, you're out of your mind, right? You went to the Rosh Hashiva, one of the Gedolei Ador, you asked him this ridiculous question? He said, no, I happened to be in the Lower East Side, and I was walking on East Broadway, I saw Rab David, so I figured I would ask him what was on my mind. I said, what did he say? Hold on to your seatbelts. He asked Rab David, which 3 people would you invite if you could invite anyone from Adam Rishon till today? You know what Rab David said? 3 poor people. Who thinks like that? 3 poor people. That's incredible. That's ACHDUS. That's unity. That's showing that you care about other people that nobody else is thinking about. Now I want to tell you another story. We know also one of the great losses that we had in the last few months was a loss of Rab Chaim Kanievsky. So after the Shiva, I was asked to speak in different schools in different places about Rab Chaim. And I made up my mind right from the beginning that I'm going to talk about his total personality, not only his learning. Everybody spoke about his learning. He finished Shas, Bavli, Yerushalmi, Medrash, Chumash, Tanakh, Shulchan Aruch, Kisvei Arizal, Kisvei Ramchal, everything, every year. I wanted to show the human element of who he was in the Ben Adam L'Chaberu. Listen to this story. A couple years ago when he was still younger and he was able to walk, it was the month of Tishrei, and he went to buy a lulav with his son-in-law. And he goes into a store in Bnei Brak, and of course the guy sees Rab Chaim Kanievsky, gives him the most gorgeous lulav he has. Rab Chaim looks at it, no, not this one. Gives him a second one, no, not this one. The third one, yeah, this one I'll buy. Fine. And he pays for it, and he goes out with his son-in-law. A guy comes running out of the store. He goes over to the son-in-law. He says, I don't believe what I just saw. God must love your father-in-law. It takes me an hour and a half to pick a lulav. He was there 15 minutes, and he got a lulav. He said, come with me. I want to show you something. He takes him to Rab Chaim's house. They go up all the stairs, and they come to the table of Rab Chaim. He's got 25 lulavim on the table. The guy says, what is this? He says, Rab Chaim knows that everybody watches every single thing that he does. Imagine if he walked into a store to buy a lulav and he doesn't buy one. No one's going to buy a lulav from that guy anymore. Because everybody's going to say, Rab Chaim couldn't find a lulav, I'm going to find a lulav. So every store he goes into, he buys at least one lulav. And then when he's got 25 on his table, then it takes him 2 hours to pick out the right one. Who thinks like that? If you go in to buy a suit or a dress and they don't have what you want, it's their problem, not yours. No, but to Rab Chaim, it's his problem. Because he knows that people are watching. And he knows that he doesn't want to hurt the proprietor in any which way. So let me tell you another story about ACHDUS. Only in Eretz Yisrael could this thing happen. It happened with an Egged bus driver. This guy's been driving an Egged bus for 30 years. 30 years. And he loves what he does. My wife always says, if you love what you do, you haven't worked a day in your life. And that's true. I love what I do. I love speaking, writing, doing prison. Haven't worked a day in my life. But this guy, he had a good word for every person that came on the bus. A Jew, an Arab, frum, not frum, sheitel, no sheitel, kids, yeshiva guys, Hasidic guys. He had something for everybody. Very friendly guy that loves everybody. One day he's driving the bus in Yerushalayim, he sees a woman running with 3 kids. They're coming to the bus. And he puts up his hand in the big window, like, take it easy, don't worry, I'll wait for you. She comes on the bus, she's out of breath. She says, oh, thanks for waiting. He says, oh, your kids are so sweet. She says, do you mind if I just put them in the back? I just want to settle them and I'll come up and I'll pay the fare. He says, yeah, of course. She puts the kids in one of the seats and she opens up her purse and she realized she rushed. She took the wrong purse. She doesn't have a wallet in this one. She had the wallet in the other one. She has no money to pay. She is so humiliated. She comes up to the bus driver and she says, I'm so sorry, but I rushed and I took the wrong purse. I don't have any money. My wallet is at home. If you want me to get off at the next stop, just tell me and I'll get off with the kids. He said, no, it's okay, it's paid for. She said, what do you mean it's paid for? He said, no, we have a bus gemach. And it's paid for. She said, what do you mean a bus gemach? No, if there's people who can't afford to pay or they don't have money, so, there's a bus gemach. And it's all paid for. You can sit down. Don't worry, you'll be fine. She can't believe it. She walks down to the back of the bus and the guy who's sitting behind the bus driver whispers to him and says, is that true? Is there really a bus gemach here? He says, yeah. He says, who's the bus gemach? The driver says, me. He says, what does that mean? He says, I lived in Ramat HaSharon. Our Rav for more than 50 years was Rabbi Edelstein. And he always said, every day the Yid has to do chesed. That's what was said before. Chavetz Chaim writes in Sefer, Avas Chesed Peri V'Beis. Every Yid should do a favor every single day. And I'm not talking a husband for a wife for a husband. That you're going to do if you know what's good for you. But I'm talking about at the house. So he said, I was thinking, the Rav said we got to do chesed. I'm not a wealthy guy. Where am I going to get money to give him? Oh, but I drive a bus. And sometimes a guy comes on or a woman comes on, she doesn't have money, so I'll pay for it. And he takes out a card to see and he shows the guy behind him. He punched it 4 times. Who thinks like that? Somebody who's thinking about other people. When we go through difficult times, but you know that other people care for you, that's how you can live. So I want to tell you a great story. Listen to this, so amazing. In Brooklyn, in Flatbush, 2 years ago, a guy made a Surside. Surside means a thank you party. And he invited all his family and friends. Nobody knew why he was doing it, but he said, don't worry, you come and I'll explain. And he explains that he's got 4 friends, and every single year, they all go down together. They were in the same high school, they got married at the same time, they live in the same neighborhood. They all go down to 5 families together. They all go down to Orlando, they rent a condominium, it's got a private swimming pool, an arcade room, and they all go down. He says, this past year we all went down, and one morning the women decided they're going to go shopping. So the men said, okay, if they're going shopping, let's take the kids, we'll go swimming. All the kids are going to swim. And when they finished swimming, so they went inside. The men went inside, the men went upstairs, the kids were in the arcade room. He's telling the story, he says, my 8-year-old noticed that my 3-year-old kid is missing. Now the 3-year-old kid, he doesn't understand the arcades, but the door to the backyard where the pool, that door was open. So instinctively, the 8-year-old kid ran outside and he sees that his baby is face down in the pool, right? Your story, right? The baby's face down in the pool. And he jumps into the pool and he grabs him. He was the only one of those 5 who was on Solomon who knew CPR. And he did CPR, he laid him out, did CPR, literally brought the kid back to life. He said, I shouldn't make a suicide. Any one of the 5 of us could have gone down. We wouldn't know what to do. His guy went down. He was out Solomon, but he knew CPR. As soon as he finishes speaking, the wife of the Hatzalah guy gets up and she says, now I want to speak. Nobody could believe it. What does she want to say? She says, Rabbi Paysach, I want to tell you something that nobody knows. This year, my husband and I, that's all the guy, we weren't going to go down. We couldn't afford Orlando this year. We had a difficult year in business. But that father called me up, and he said, what do you mean you're not coming? We're like brothers and sisters, we're one big family. I'm paying for you and your husband and for your 4 kids. And that's what he did. He paid for 6 tickets. So he thought he was doing us the biggest favor because he brought us down. Turned out he was doing himself the biggest favor because the guy he brought down was not the guy who saved his son's life. Wow. You want to see where the story is written in the Torah? Right here. Take a look at this. Photographer, focus in on it. You see what this word says, V'nosnu? Anybody notice these words? What's it called in English? Palindrome. There you go, palindrome. Mom, pop, race car, radar, Aviva, David, Yahrzeit, all those, right? Zok the Heilige Balaturin. This is in Shemois Lamed, Pasuk Yud Beis. In Tikra Enel Amafrei, if you read this, V'nosnu, they shall give, you read it backwards, it's also V'nosnu, Loi Malach, to tell you that which you give to your friend, of your talent, of your time, of your heart, of your money. It's coming back to you. You're not missing anything. The greatest investment that we can do in having unity and caring for others is the investment in ourselves. Because it's going to come back to you. When you care for other people are going to care for you. That's really what it's all about. And so I want to tell you a story that happened with me. For the longest time, my mother wouldn't let me tell the story because she was a little embarrassed. But, so when I wrote it in one of the market books, it's not with our name. But she told me I could tell it. I'll show you an amazing thing. I told you before that when I was 21, my father passed away. I had to leave yeshiva. He taught me how to be a mile. Mrs. Hamburger is here. I did her son many, many years ago in Merrick, and so many others. Today I was on a plane. It's unbelievable. There was a guy on the plane. He had long hair down to his neck with a ponytail and a beard. And I see he's traveling with his father and his mother. And the father comes over to me. I don't know the guy from a hole in the wall. He says, you were Ismail. That's not what happens to all my clients. But anyway, then he wanted I should take a picture. He said, we have a picture of you and him when he was 8 days old. I was going to say, I better give him a bigger yarmulke, but I didn't. Okay, because I listened to your speech. So, but the point is, believe me, when I was 21, it was hard to be a male. Because most people didn't want to take a 21-year-old kid. I would walk into a house and a grandmother would take a look at me and say, oh, you look so young. So I said, the baby's also young. You try to break the ice a little bit, right? So one day, a man, Mr. Chaim Israel, comes over to me in shul. My father passed away in 66. This was the beginning of 67. And he says, here, this is for you. He gives me an envelope with $1,500, which was a fortune. I am so sorry. So what happened was, I said to him, I'm not poor, I'm not a beggar. You know, me and my mother were doing okay. He says, no, it's a loan. So I said, what do you mean a loan? He says, I will never ask you for it. Just take it whenever you want, you pay me back. Okay, fine. I come home, I say, Mom, Mr. Israel just gave us $1,500. She said, we're not on the in, we're not poor. I said, Mom, that's what I told him. But he said, it's a loan, we can pay it back. When? Whenever we want. Okay, my mother knew and I knew that we really needed the money, so we took it. A year and a half later, I go to his office on Queens Boulevard, and I say to Mr. Israel, you know, I just want to tell you I'm so grateful to you, because we really did need the money, but now I'd like to give it back. He said, I'm not taking it. I said, what do you mean you're not taking it? You're the one who told me it's a loan. I wasn't going to take it if it was just a stalker. He said, sit down, I want to tell you a story. And he tells me this story. He says, do you remember a couple years ago, he's talking about himself. He was the wealthiest guy in our shul, and he went bankrupt literally overnight. He must have made a couple of bad investments, and everybody in the shul was talking about it. I was a little kid, I didn't know, so you just hear the words. He said there was a man in our neighborhood, Dr. Mo Lowenstein. He came over to me when I went bankrupt, he says. And he gave me money, and I said to him, I'm not poor, I'm managing. He said, no, this is a loan. So I said to him what you said to me. What do you mean it's a loan? When do I pay you back? He said, I will never ask you for it, whenever you want. A few years later, I went back to Mr. Lowenstein, Mr. Israel says, and I was going to give him the money. He said, I'm not taking it. I said, what do you mean you're not taking it? You said that it's a loan. He said, you got to pay back, but not to me. One day you're going to find a family that needs the money and you give it to them. That's how you pay me back. And when they come to pay you, that's what you're going to tell them. You're going to give it to another family. And that's what my mother and I did. You can understand my mother was embarrassed in the beginning because we really did need the money. But we gave it on, and hopefully they passed it on and on and on. And that's what unity is all about. And that's what caring is all about. So I want to tell you something that my father once told me. He used to say that in every Shabbat Brachos. I have no idea where he got it. Maybe the Reader's Digest. But it's something that you will never, ever forget. The word united and the word untied, if you write it out, you'll see it's spelled with the exact same letters. United and untied. You know what the difference is? Where you put the I. If you put the I, the ich, in the wrong place, then a family is untied, a community is untied, and Klal Yisrael is untied. But if you put the I in the right place, then a family is united, a community is united, and Klal Yisrael is united. And that's why the people in Bell Harbor, the people of Surfside, all of you could be so proud. You didn't have to come here tonight. It's not your Yahrzeit. It's the Yahrzeit of people who never passed away in Champlain. Champlain Towers, east, south. But we care. We care. And the world cares. Wherever I went to pass, since Rabbi Paysach KROHN called me, I told everybody I'm going to the greatest speech in the world. The greatest speech, not because I'm going to give the greatest speech, but because the essence of what people want to do, to remember each other in such a painful night, and to know that we're there for each other. How beautiful is that? So I want to tell you now a fabulous story, and then we'll end with two things. Listen to this. This story happened in Eretz Yisrael a number of years ago. It happened with a family that has 7 children, and they're very, very organized. And every year they go on vacation. But the father and mother are so organized, they take a piece of paper, they write out an itinerary of where the family is going to go. And they sit down with the 7 kids, they said, we're going this way, this place, on this and this day. Don't ask to go to any other places, this is what we can afford. And mommy's making all the lunches and all the snacks. We're not going into any restaurants or any eateries. This is what we can afford. And they give each kid a certain amount of spending money, and that's how they get ready. They rent a minivan, and that year they were going to go to the north to Tveria, and they were going to go jeeping in Tveria, and then a boat ride on the Kinneret, and everything was worked out. So on a Tuesday morning they go, and if you know the geography, if you go into Tveria, you pass through Netanya. Tanya's gorgeous, right? So they stop at a picnic table along the sea, and they're having lunch. The mother brought out all the lunches and everything, the snacks and all. And then they finish, and everybody's going back to the car, except 8-year-old Zevi. He says to his father, Abba, I've got to use the facilities. I need the bathroom. Now the father knows it's a long trip to Tveria. Where's he going to get a bathroom here? There's only picnic tables here. But he sees a block away a Jewish restaurant. Now he knows very well that the restaurants can't stand when you go in there just to use the facilities if you're not buying anything. What's he going to do? The kid has, kid's got to go to the laboratory, and it's a long trip to Tveria. So he tells everybody, his wife and kids, to get back into the car. He goes with Zevi. They go up to the restaurant. He opens the door, there's a waitress waiting. And he says to her, ma'am, please forgive me. I know that they don't usually like that we should use the facilities, but my little boy has to use the facilities. I promise you, he'll make it very quick. We have a long trip to go up to Tveria. Could you just let him use it, and he'll come out very quickly. She looks around the whole restaurant. She says, okay. So the kid does what he has to do. He's coming back. He's almost out of the restaurant. He's walking with his father, and the Israeli waiter, Rafi, sees him. And he explodes. What are you doing here? Who gave you permission to come in here? You're not buying anything? What is it, a public laboratory? Who gave you permission to come in here? All you religious Jews, you're all the same. Take advantage of everybody else. You didn't buy anything here. And this father, he's watching on the side. The waitress is there. And she's trembling. Because the whole world is afraid of this Rafi guy. And he knows that if he says that this waitress allowed him in, he'll fire her on the spot. He doesn't know what he's going to do. Now he learned the Slobodka, this father, and he had a mashgiach named Rabbi Paysach who was a tremendous tzaddik. So in a flash, he's thinking, what would my mashgiach do there? And in a second, listen what he says. He says, sir, stop talking. You got it all wrong. All my kids, they're all coming in here to eat. We're all going to eat here. He said, what are you talking about? He says, you think we're not eating? I'm sending my son. He's bringing everybody in. He says, how many people altogether? 9. 9 people? He says, yeah, you got to set 2 tables. So the prophet can't believe it. He sets up 2 tables, and the kid goes out to tell his imam. And the kid says, you come in the restaurant. She doesn't believe him. She said, oh, it's ridiculous. Abba Kidnap said that. We never went into a restaurant. He said, I'm telling you, Abba wants everybody to come in. Fine, they all come in. They all sit down. They never saw food like this in their lives. They never saw prices like this. They never saw a menu like this. It's unbelievable. Fine. So what happens is, they serve them, and the mother says, everybody can have 1 dish and 1 drink. Finally, when they finish, they notice by the kitchen, there's a lot of activity outside the kitchen. There's 6 waiters, they're like soldiers. They're standing, every one of them has ice cream in one hand, and cake and sparklers in the other hand. And all 6 waiters are coming to this table. And the father says, wait, there's a mistake here. I didn't order dessert. He says, no, don't worry. And the owner of the restaurant comes over to him. He says, I want to tell you what happened when you guys sat down. That waitress came into the kitchen and she started crying. And we asked her, what happened? And she said, I just saw something somebody did for me. I never in my life had somebody do that for me. I know very well they were not going to buy anything here. But when that father saw that I was going to get in trouble because I let that little boy in, he changed his whole modus operandi, and he came and he had all his kids come in. All the money they're spending is only so that I shouldn't have gotten in trouble. And she started crying again. So the owner tells the father this story. He said, for special people, we want to do special things. You could have the dessert. Okay, kids have the dessert. When they're all finished, the father says, okay, can I have the bill? So they give him the bill, and on the bill it says like this, if you ever come here again, it's 50% off. So he says, yeah, okay, but what about now? I want to pay for the meal today. You're going to love this. You know what the owner says to him? We have a policy in this restaurant. We only charge people. We don't charge malachim. Imagine that? That's what you were talking about. We only charge people. We don't charge malachim. We could all be these kind of malachim. Again, like the Beckers in Lakewood, who thought of that, making the Seder and learning the Nigunim. When you're there for each other, we can live through anything. And so I want to tell you 2 more things. I want to tell you something that Rav Schwab said. Now there's a wonderful, wonderful sefer that Rav Schwab wrote. And it's called Rav Schwab on Prayer. And in there, by Kriya Shema, he writes this thing. And tonight, we are going to learn how to say Shema Yisrael. Like we never, ever said it before. There's a Zohar HaChodesh that writes like this. The Zohar HaChodesh is in Rus, page 77. Asvasa lebarnash. The remedy for a human being, Bahai Alma, in this world, B'chol Yoma. You want to have a remedy for your ailments? Man dekora Kriya Shema al tikuna. The Zohar says, just read Kriya Shema the way it's supposed to be. You're going to be okay. Doesn't say how to do it. I'm going to tell you in a moment how to do it. And you know Rav Schwab brings there, it says in the Orachaim Siman Samach Aleph Dal, Noegin likrois pasuk rishon b'kol ram. You got to say the first part of Shema out loud, so that you'll have more kavanah. And then Rav Schwab says something so genius. Who would think of this? He says, Shema Yisrael is 6 words. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Baruch Shem is 6 words. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusa L'Yolam Voed. Why 6? Because there were 6 Orei Miklat in Eretz Yisrael. 6 Orei Miklat, 3 in Eretz Yisrael, 3 in Eivra Yarden, because the Orei Miklat is a city of sanctuary. And the Shema Yisrael, when you say it properly, as we'll learn in a moment, that's the sanctuary for all of us. That gives us mental stability to go through life. Now let me tell you what I think from tonight on here, commemorating Surfside, how we should start saying Shema Yisrael. You close your eyes, right? And you cover your eyes. The Bnei Arya says one of the reasons that we cover our eyes is because we can't look out, because we can't believe what's going on. And we don't want that it should disturb our amunah, so we close our eyes. And we have full trust and faith in Hashem. The Shulchan Aruch says the reason we cover our eyes so we shouldn't be diverted from attention. Shema Yisrael. Hashem. Hashem is the Midas HaRachman. Stop. Everybody stop for a moment and think of all the good that we have. Every one of us here has so much good that we never think about, because we're always focusing on what we don't have. You have children, you have a house, you have a spouse, you have a mortgage that's paid. You're married off your children, they have children. I say anybody who married off all their children and their children have children, you're a millionaire. You should be dancing in the street. We have so much good. Stop. When you say Hashem, think of all the good that you have. Did it ever occur to you? It occurred to me once, the word moedim, which means thank you, is B'gematria 100. Mem Vav Daled Yud Mem. You know why? Because you got to be grateful for 100% of the things that you have. Then you say Elokeinu. There's Hashem, but there's Elokeinu. Elokeinu is COVID. Elokeinu is Surfside. Elokeinu is Reb Chaim's P'tira. Elokeinu is Tveria, Baron, all those terrible things. Those are judgment. There's Hashem and there's Elokeinu. And you think about the good and you think about the difficulties. But just remember, one day, Oz Yoshir, Hashem, we're going to understand why it had to happen. Why it was Rachman. Today we can't understand it. But Hashem is the Midas HaRachman. So you know how you hang on? When you say Shema, you say Hashem, I know you have so much good for me. Elokeinu, I know life can be so tough, but I believe in you. B'tachon doesn't mean everything's going to be good. B'tachon means you have a plan, and we believe in you. And that's why we come together. We come together to give chizuk to each other. For Nosnu, we give chizuk to others that need it tonight, because when we need it, they're going to be there for us as well. Hashem Echad. And I believe that if we only say Shema, think about it. We say it 3 times a day. And when you say it by Krishna Alamita, stop and think Shema Yisrael. 6 words. That's a city of sanctuary. Hashem, we have so much good. Elokeinu, we've got difficulties. But Hashem Echad, we're going to be there. I was going to end with this. But then, when I heard Rabbi Lipska tonight, I figured he deserves one more story. Well, a Babacha story. A good story. Listen to this story. This will send you flying. When Rabbi Nachman Mendel Schneerson Zecher Tzadik L'Vracha became the Rebbe in the early 1950s after the Rayatz passed away, so in those days it wasn't known as it was known near the end of his life that so many people came. So of course he had more time to talk to people. So there was a father, a modern guy from Brooklyn, who came in with his son to get a bracha from the Rebbe, because the son was having a bar mitzvah. Fine, so the Rebbe sat him down, got into a conversation, and then the Rebbe, in the conversation, asked the boy a question the father couldn't believe that the Rebbe would ask such a question. He said, are you interested in sports? The father couldn't believe it. The kid said, yeah. He said, what sport do you like best? He said, I like baseball. So he said, is there any team that you root for? So this was in Brooklyn. So he said, the Brooklyn Dodgers. Yeah, I love the Brooklyn Dodgers. So the Rebbe said to the boy, does your father ever take you to the games? He said, yeah, a few weeks ago he took us to the game, and it was terrible. So the Rebbe said, it was terrible? What was terrible? He said, well, it was the 7th inning, the Dodgers were losing 10-0, so we left. Listen to what the Rebbe asked him. He said, did the players also leave? Jesus. So the little boy says, players? I can't leave. I'm a fan, I can leave. So the Rebbe says, that's the lesson I'm trying to teach you. You see, right now, you're bar mitzvah, you're so excited you're going to put on tefillin. You're so excited you can be counted in the minyan. You're so excited you're going to do mitzvahs. But after a while, the enthusiasm wanes. And same thing with people. You get involved, you do a mitzvah, but then after a while, you lose enthusiasm. The Rebbe says, I want to teach you something. Remember all your life, always be a player. Don't be a fan.
Wow.
What a great lesson. You know something? To me, the greatest player of all, Kaviyachal, if you can call it that, was Rabbi Akiva. He lost 24,000 Talmidim. What did he do? What would we do? 24,000? Okay, Hashem, I get it. You don't like my Torah, you don't like my Talmidim, I'll go out to get another job. No. We're starting over. We're not giving up. Because we're players. And at Surfside, we're players. And at Bal Harbor, we're players. We've gone through Gehenna, but we're going to make it. Because we're going to make it together. Because we're going to say Shema Yisrael, Hashem, Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So one day, Oz Yoshim, we're going to sing together. Maybe we should help them. We should be there for each other. We should see Mashiach this Tisha B'Av, so that next year, in the Yom Kippur of Bal Harbor, Jerusalem, we'll be able to have this kiddos and dance together. Thank you so much for inviting me.